welcome back once again to Nerdly Out Loud. We're still on tour, we're still going guerrilla, but at least we now have a fancy backdrop because Spencer says Brandon's key. I'm back this time to talk about the movie Anonymous, a movie that I absolutely adored, and seeing it on the big screen today has been absolutely phenomenal. So I'll let you guys introduce yourself and let us know what you did on the film first.
I'm Alasdair Mackay. I wrote, directed and produced the film.
And I'm Karenina Angelique, and I am a producer on the film because I'm still making things happen, and I'm also part of the cast.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you came into the industry.
Yeah, sure. So I was in a hateful job in the city until I was about 29. And then I had that hopefully early midlife crisis. Hopefully at 29 you count as early midlife, but yeah. I'm going to say hopefully it is. Hopefully I get long enough.
If it was a real one, it is.
Yeah.
You might still have another one to come.
Oh yeah, exactly. No, yeah. So I had the early midlife, and I realised I didn't like any aspect of my life at all, and I was just searching around for, well, what do I like? And film was the obvious answer. So I sort of quit everything and went to film school and initially thought I'd wanted to be a screen actor, and then realised after about 2 weeks of training I really didn't, because actors don't have enough control, and I'm a control freak. Yeah. So I started writing, and then I had 3 of the first 10 or 20 shorts I wrote made it to Cannes. So that was a good start. I think this is gone. Is it gone? No, it's just been not holding it around.
It'll drop in and out.
Yeah. So that was a good start with the writing career, but I wasn't directing at that point. And I think like a lot of directors, you start as a writer and then you watch the directors and you go, I can do this. And of course, the first 4 films I tried to direct were awful, because
awful, or are you just being humble?
I don't know. Maybe ask her. No.
I've only seen screen stills.
I don't show her.
Doesn't look great.
Yeah. So, but you learn on the job, and then I remember having a moment where it clicked in about 2015, and then every film I've made since then, at least in terms of what I've done as a director, I've been a lot more proud of. And Anonymous is the first attempt at a feature. Lots of shorts. First attempt. That's my debut feature. That.
Wow.
And we've done one TV series before, but a very different style. All the narrative, heavy-hitting stuff I've done has been short, so it was a big leap into the feature film one.
Yeah, no, it's a huge leap.
Yeah.
So I read that you guys kickstarted this. Did you do the crowdfunding?
Indiegogo. But yeah.
How's that? How does that even work? Because that seems like...
I'll let the boss take that one.
It's slightly soul destroying, but I think because we did it over lockdown, and some of our initial pre-production team were a bit apprehensive about, putting their hands out and physically asking. And it even took some coaching to get them to even post about it on social media, So. And then I wasn't going to be on the pre-production team at all, because we've butted heads in the past on other stuff. But then I could see he was constantly coming to me going, oh, I don't know. And I was like, all right, okay, I know, because I tried to do the music thing before and I never had the bravery to push it. So I know what I should have done. So let me do it for you. And in the end, because I kept getting angry, so I had to make it about, let me do it for us. That's a little bit of marriage counseling there. It took just consistently being out there. Indiegogo actually makes a whole booklet on what to do, and if you follow that, it actually really helps a lot. But literally, I was just staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning, messaging the 700 friends I have on Facebook. There were some people I hadn't spoken to since secondary school in 20 years, and some of them gave money, and I think and it's weird because I never felt like, I'm the kind of person that always feels like I'm a bit of a burden, people are just, it sounds ridiculous, I know, but I feel like people are taking pity on me to be my friend, so that's why I never pushed it on my music stuff. And then with this, to see all these people just throw love I was like, oh my gosh, why did I wait till I was years old to do this? Like, people do actually like care about seeing me succeed and seeing this happen. And like I said, we did it over lockdown, and a lot of people were like, oh, but our friends, you know, they're doing it hard. And it's like, well, yeah, they are doing it hard, but the lady downstairs, she's still getting Amazon packages. So there is money out there. You've just got to ask 10 people, and one of them will have some money, you know. So it's tough, it's hard, it's very humbling, because you have to just, how else were we going to get the film made, you know? And yeah.
If I could just, I'll just add on to that Karenina was talking about persistence and keep going, and really she discovered that you've kind of got to message everybody 4 times, because the first time they'll read it and they'll go, oh, I'll look at that later. Then the second time, and it goes on, and it's actually on the fourth one where they go, right, I'll actually physically make that payment. And then the other thing is that you focus on what you call your smalls, your 10, 20, 40, 50, 60 pound donations. And if you focus on that, what we found anyway, was every so often, seemingly out of nowhere, we'd get an amazing blessing, and someone we'd never heard of that had just seen the campaign online put a huge amount of money in.
Do you think that's because they're seeing like people chipping in, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, this has got legs?
Yeah, 100%. So the small stuff leads to the big stuff in that respect.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And just like
two extra points on that. My own sister needed me to physically message her for her to give money. She was like, oh, I kept seeing this and kept putting it off. Now I'll actually do it. My own sister, like actual physical family, couldn't just take the hint from the general post. It needed to be a personal message. So my biggest tips are personal messages, and also that this is something from the Indiegogo like Bible. When you keep hitting goals, do a post where you physically say people's names. It's positive peer pressure, and the rest of your friends will be like, oh, I want that person to say my name in a post, and then they'll give you more money. Those were the big, you would see a big influx of money after I do like a, just want to say a big thank you to James, this person, and yeah, then you'd see this next rush of money, and you're like, yes, thank you, God.
This is a super powerful piece, and can you tell us a little bit, without spoilers or anything like that, a little bit about the story and where the story came from?
Can I?
Yeah, of course you can. You go for it.
We recently changed. No, it's just because we recently we've had different forms of feedback, and sometimes, I don't know if you've ever found this, but like sometimes you think a film is one thing, and then when you see how the audience responds to it, you go, my film, or it's actually this. So we've seen it with our comedy series as well. We thought it was, because the comedy series is about a superhero who can't be bothered, so we marketed it to Marvel people. They hated it.
Yeah.
But when we marketed it to Mighty Boosh people, they loved it, because it wasn't actually about superheroes, it was about people do nothing, basically. So again, with this, it's basically about an unknown guy comes into an unorthodox recovery meeting. It's not an AA meeting. It's kind of following the principles to a point, but these people are broken. They're doing their best. They just come together to share their experiences and realize, this is the cheesy little line, that while they may be anonymous, they're not all alone.
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Right,
there you
right.
go.
Put it on your poster.
She came up with that.
It's great. I like it.
I thought I was the writer.
And where did the germ, the seed of the idea come from? Like when you started writing, and then you needed to make a full feature of it. Where did that come from?
So I stopped drinking in October 2013. So I've got my own sort of history of sobriety, I suppose you'd call it. I never went through AA, but I had to make that decision to stop drinking, and so it's always been something that's in the back of my mind, something I wanted to make a film about. And then at the start of lockdown, we were in it's like a 7-Eleven type corner store buying milk or eggs or something really unglamorous, and there was a guy in there loading, and I mean loading his basket up with beer, with spirits, with wines, and it just clicked, and I went, people are going to be people aren't accountable to having to go to work at the moment. People aren't accountable to society. They can stay in their houses and just drink, and for addicts, that's a poison pill.
Definitely.
And I think that was the point when I went, this is the time to make this film. And then it was a case of just getting on with it, because this was February, March of 2020, and I wrote the film, raised the money, cast the film, and we were shooting in September. So we did it really quickly, from the point of seeing that guy in the store and going, right, we're doing this.
In terms of doing something like even writing something and getting your cast together and all that, how does that work in a sort of COVID kind of pandemic, sort of lockdown kind of way? Like, what were the constraints that you had?
So it was weird, because there was good things and bad things. So one of the things I realized really quickly was, during lockdown, a lot of people who I might not be able to get, more crew than anything, and lights and tech and all that stuff, I might not be able to get it for as cheap as I could get it for, and locations and things like that during the pandemic. So I sort of used it to our advantage in that respect, and I'm convinced the film came in on a much lower budget because of the pandemic. I mean, a massive shout out to Hillsong Church, that our line producer is on the production team at Hillsong Church, which is, anyone doesn't know, is a mega church. They have like 10,000 odd people every Sunday. It's massive, right? And obviously you can imagine the lights they've got, and the stands they've got, and the lenses they've got. And because he was our line producer, he went, yeah, I'll just grab them. And so we're just like, okay. So that side of it was, the pandemic helped us, weirdly. But obviously the other side to it was, for a lot of filmmakers, the pandemic hits the brakes. There's no money coming in. So it was just surviving and being able to sort of, because when you make a film, it's a full-time job. It's more than a full-time job. So it's conceding, I'm not going to make any money for the next year, but I have to do this. Do you know what I mean? So that side of it was challenging. And obviously the other thing is, the film's a mental health roller coaster. And that put both of us through oh yeah, like you wouldn't believe, yeah.
And on that, and the reason I fell in love with this movie, and it was mostly like, I'm a very, like, I love dialogue. I love talky talk movies, as I call them. And this is very much, it's a talky talk movie, but it's a talky talk movie with a point to say and everything like that. But you throw in little quirky bits of comedy as well, which totally makes the movie, because it's sort of like, it comes at the right moment. How important was it that you had those little moments of slight levity? Yeah,
hugely important, because you do it through the vehicle of one or two characters. So there was really the two. There was Leo, and then there was Steve, I think he called it, and the Jay that comes in, Jay and Jason, that come into the bathroom from there. So there were those moments that, yeah, you need that lightness, because it's having a consciousness, and this just comes from experience as a filmmaker, it's having a consciousness of what you're trying to do to your audience and where you want them to be emotionally at that point. And if you just ramp them right up to edge of their seat, 9 out of 10 for the entire movie, at some point that gets boring. So you need to drop them, and yeah, I guess it's just timing, and it just comes with experience in terms of where you put them. And then trusting bringing the right actors to...
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Like, where did you find this cast? Where, like, all these people, do you know these people, or...?
Well, that one I'm married to,
oh,
so that helps.
That's always going to help.
Yeah, and then a few of them I'd worked with before. I'd worked with Rob, who plays Leo, before. I'd worked with Lucas, the lead, the man. I'd worked with him before. We did some casting. Rashid, who plays Jake, was our only physical in a casting room, traditional casting, because the pandemic was changing everything. So then we had to do, I guess you call them Zoom auditions for Violet, Veronica, and for Chloe, Eugenia. And it was a mixed bag, to be honest with you. The big one I'd like to shout out really is Phil Wolf, who plays Peter, because he was actually my Meisner coach when I was at film school. So for him to allow me to take him where I needed to take him to get that piece right was big for me, because that was almost the master student kind of, for him to have that what's the word, humility was massive.
You were the new Anakin.
Yeah, exactly.
For you getting into this space and all, for your character and for the subject matter that you're talking about?
Yeah, because I'd done bits and pieces of film. I'm more theatre trained, and I think with theatre, you can definitely like drop it because the character lives in that space. The character lives on the stage. I think I don't know what it was about Liv, but she consumed me a lot more than I realised. And to build up to her, I sat down and I researched the steps, and I went through the steps as Liv, because I wanted to bring where do I think she's at in the steps, and I figured out for Liv, there's where she's actually at and where she thinks she's at. So she would probably think she's further along than she actually is, and one of the things you find out is it's a constant loop. Because there's new things that you figure out about yourself. I mean, anyone figures stuff out about themselves and moves on. But you figured out that you weren't really living with me anymore. You were living with Liv. There was a lot of watching Hannibal, and what else was I watching? I went dark.
I left the room.
And I didn't even realise.
It's like you deal with that yourself.
It wasn't until I had a bit of a breakdown on set, and the next day I sat down with Veronica, who plays Violet, and she's like, "How are you?" And I went, "I think I'm a bit more method than I realised." She goes, "No, you're total method. You are," because she's an acting coach as well. She's like, "You were really in there." I go, and it was because the other thing was, it was the day after we'd taken down the circle and we'd taken down the lights, so that space was no longer the circle of shame, basically. And the moment that was taken down, just you could feel the release, there's the brokenness isn't being amplified in the center of the circle anymore,
It's like this big ball of...
it was intense, and I don't want to put anyone down, but I don't know that some people were aware that was what's happening, so it was just... I wasn't aware that it was happening until it was broken, and I went, oh, no wonder I felt like this. do you know what I mean? It's not till it's taken away that you realise, oh, this has been affecting me in this way. But it was, and it was...
I was aware it was happening. It was intentional.
I love that.
Yeah.
Are you just going to take credit for it now?
No, yeah, I will, obviously. But no, it was a conscious directorial choice to have all the circle stuff, and I had everybody, all the actors sit in the circle and kind of put all their negative energy that their characters were holding on to into the middle of the circle. And by doing that meant every time they looked across the circle at someone else, they were looking through that negative energy space. So you created that tension between all the characters. And it worked. It meant we had about 6 months of recovery.
Everybody in therapy.
But but it made the film better, so hey.
As long as it makes it better.
Yeah.
I'm going to start wrapping up a little bit now, but first of all, if there was one thing you wanted a viewer or an audience to take away from Anonymous, what would that one thing be?
That everybody's broken, and hopefully people recognise themselves or family members or friends in the people around the circle, and sometimes people are very good at hiding their problems, and it's in many ways it's the worst thing you can do. So if you watch the film and you see something and you go, oh, that's just like my niece, or that's just like my uncle, or that's just like my brother, or that's just like me, then recognise that and take the steps you need to take.
Awesome.
I think it was just off the back of that, literally in the toilets after this screening, somebody came up to me and said, my mum was an alcoholic and I've been to so many meetings, and your character, I know her, I've seen her, so it's having a mixed, it is having a bit of a mixed response from the sobriety community. Some people really love it, some people are like, that's not how an AA meeting is, that's not, but we're trying to put out there, no, it's not exactly right, but what we're trying to show is this brokenness, and that it's not about getting it right every time.
No.
It's about just taking the next step, that one day at a time. That's the mantra at the end, is that one day at a time, to just get through this next 24 hours. Or even if you're a Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt fan, every 10 seconds, you can get through 10 seconds. Do you know what I mean? Just get through the next 10 seconds and it'll be okay.
I like that.
Yeah.
Right, so we're going to wrap it up, but first of all, let people know after the festival run, or the festival run's just really starting and getting going and all that, let people know where they can see Anonymous, how they can find Anonymous, and what the next step is after the festival circuit.
So if you can follow us on Instagram's probably the best place to follow us. It's at anonymous_the_film.
Yeah, I tagged you while I was watching the movie when it was just starting. It took me ages to find that.
Oh, bless.
It's there though.
Yeah, it is there. It was the, I think at the time it was like the closest thing we could get, the closest handle we could get. But there's a lot, I'm just with my marketing hat on at the moment, I'm kind of training our audience for what they're going to see, but it's really good, and we'd love you to be part of our community on there. From a filming perspective, there's great cinematography, there's great, the score is amazing, the grade is amazing. Shout out to Panji and Michael on the score and Hamish on the cinematography. So if you're a film buff, you'll really like it for that. I'm trying really hard because the grade looks really dark on Instagram. So please, if you're a grader and you're like, oh, it's not that great, that's because it's Instagram. Just wait until. But we're working on getting it onto different streaming platforms. I'm in conversations with distributors at the moment. So we've just got to get through the festival run. On Instagram, you can sign up to our newsletter where you'll find out when the next screenings are, which festivals we get into next. But hopefully by the end of the year, you'll be able to watch it on a streaming platform somewhere.
Awesome. So we'll just start wrapping up there. And thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for bringing the movie to the festival. I fell in love with it straight away when we were going through the selections, but that's just me. But thank you so much for giving it to us.
Thanks for having us. Seriously, thank you for having us. Been great.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
And we'll be keeping an eye on you, and hopefully you come back again.
Hope so.
So,
yeah.
Awesome. And that's us. I never know how
Great.
to end these things.
I think, and that's us is good.